Hi,
What
host
can you
Eric
do?
here, host of Talking with Famous People, and Taylor, as one of his list of topics sent to me today, most of which were very good topics, one of which was the midlife crisis topic. How different types enter into a midlife crisis, or what behaviors display that, what does it mean, etc. So, let me first address this topic by saying I have long had a dislike of the expression midlife crisis because I think my own behavior sort of fits into the textbook definition of that, right? It's
Yeah, you're
basically,
beginning of life crisis.
yeah, that's what I think a lot of people would interpret my own behavior as. Whereas I don't see it as a midlife crisis. I see it as me finally becoming being able to be who I want to be and not be so
You
constrained
are
by
true
multiple factors.
consciousness for once. Like there's no one else telling you, "Oh, shut up, Mr. Host." You're not allowed to say that. For once, you're like, "No, I run this thing."
Well, I hope I don't say that, but it's true that I'm not having people tell me to shut up, and it is nice, and it is the first time in my life that I've not been so constrained because you know for a lot of reasons. Anyway,
Does your
what
mom?
Yeah.
J
Seriously,
Matt,
Eric, shut up. No, I'm just kidding.
it's just J Matt is filling the holes there. Thank you, appreciate that. I was missing that aspect in my life. I needed some more of it.
No, my
Uh,
mom too. She's bad. She
I'd like to
is so
admire that
good, just
that very
bad.
whimsy word he used there at the end. What is that? Maleficarum?
I think it's a magic word. Is
That's
that a
what
med?
Dora.
Well, I think it
Is that
evil
magic, J Matt?
doing.
Oh, evil doing women. Oh, it translates as witchcraft. Hmm.
Oh,
Okay.
that's cool. Totally
Well,
cool, man.
I
I
hope you
love
don't.
it.
I hope you don't cast any spells on me. Anyway, my mom was sort of conservative in
Yeah,
her
man.
understanding of things. She also wanted to make sure I
Sounds
expressed in ways that were
good.
socially acceptable. And then my wife, another SFJ, did the same thing. My second wife. My first wife was kind of crazy. So I think my first wife was probably an INFP, but I don't know. Anyway, that didn't last very long. The second marriage lasted a lot longer and comprised most of my recent time of life. So yeah, that's true for me that I'm getting to express myself, and I don't like to think of it as a midlife crisis. However, I do understand certain other aspects of things that are described as midlife crisis that I might be more guilty of if I when I obviously having a live band is something that I want to do as well, and I have a live band, but that I think is more subject to the critique of. I mean, it's so stereotypical. Like you're a 45-year-old man and you're getting the band back together. Of course, it's not getting any band back together. It's a new band. It's never existed before.
Yeah, of course. It's more about you and your relationship. This has nothing to do with that. This is
Well,
more about you and how do you exist in yourself.
right.
Part
I
it's not your journey.
I agree that
And
ultimately it's a label that people use to dismiss or undervalue certain behaviors by people based on their age. And I mean, I don't.
value. What are you talking about, man? And
Well,
no, you have your journey, and
I,
that's the problem. Is the weirdest part when you have someone else who's like maybe 10 years younger than you. It's always the weirdest part of what the hell do you do now?
I don't know. What do I do now when there's somebody 10 years younger than me?
Yeah,
I,
that's what he says too. And you're like, you're both looking at each other, and you're so. At what point is like the issue of boredom comes up, and boredom is like the biggest thing of creativity. It's like that's the issue. It's like, and I say this because that's how I lost my marriage too. Like boredom is the thing. It's like it's the thing. Like, what do you do with boredom? And that is the thing with a relationship that no one ever talks about. Like, what do you do with boredom? And how much do you resent the other? How they deal with it? Then it's like, some people say like, oh, it's how much they're like chewing food or something. No, it's how you deal with boredom. Boredom is a real issue of everything. Because boredom is how we interact.
So how did boredom?
Like boredom.
So how did boredom come into play?
Fucking make shit.
So explain more specifically how boredom played into the dissolution of your marriage.
Like the camera?
I mean, if you don't want to, that's fine. I don't know. I think it's an interesting enough topic. I don't.
Well, with boredom, it comes into the effect of you think what is boredom is as much as where you can't relate to anything and you're hyper energetic and nothing's going anywhere and you feel like God, it's as if you have 4 hours sleep and you just woke up, you know, like that's boredom. And it's that feeling, you know. You know what boredom is. Like
No, I know what boredom is. I do understand what boredom is.
It is the thing where everyone's talking shit and
I'm not quite understanding the link between boredom and marriage problems.
oh,
I do get boredom. I know what that is.
Everyone is looking for the connection. But that's what I was really disappointed about. So I always thought that, I would connect to that thing, you know, like 20 years beyond, where you're like, it's beyond boredom. It's like beyond all that bullshit, and you're like, let's just go. Let's go into freaky shit. And like, let's just go. And
Where else would one go?
Everywhere else, it's wisdom beyond. It's galaxy. Imagine, like, let's just give up boredom. We accept it, and it's a concept. It's like all right. But imagine you go like, well, you know what? What do we do with boredom? We're like, so I was like, forget those friends with my persons, and then bang, like everyone is there, and it's just the person. I never got to that level. That sounds like, to me, that sounds like that's what it was, the meaning of why people live for 30 years with each other. Because they get to that point. They develop that communication.
Yeah. I mean, my parents are still together, and there's something beautiful about that. You know, they've been.
Personality you are, or how do we get in type? But the MBTI, they're going to throw that out the window. They invent shit. Shit that we don't know. And I want to know. That's crazy stuff.
Who invents this stuff? Yes? Ken, are you gonna offer me some guidance here? I could use some probably. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I was just wondering about the topic of like the midlife crisis and stuff like that.
Yes.
Do you particularly follow any ideas about the functions as they develop, sort of in a person throughout their ages? Like some people say that like you'll develop like your third function in your 30s or your fourth more in your 40s, but I've also heard that like for INFJ's SE actually jumps ahead before TI and TI ends up developing later.
It's weird, eh? Because how much can you afford?
I think that's a really good question, Ken, and let me address it for a second. I think that it's like, for example, NE is a function that if it's in your dominant slot, it causes you to mature. Extroverted intuition, if it's in your dominant slot, like an ENTP or an ENFP, it causes you in general to mature more slowly, I think. And I think also that as far as for me, I do believe the third function is coming in after the fourth, more or less. Although I could be wrong about that. I could have such a rough understanding of SI and such a rough relationship with it that I'm
No,
wrong. But I think I used
stay.
to care more about
Person,
SI.
weaknesses and where your strong points and where are you? Where is this going? Right? Where's the
Well,
NVT? How does it work?
okay, well, my point here is that for me, when I was in my first marriage, I was in charge of all the SI household stuff myself, and I paid all the bills and I did all that kind of stuff, and I was pretty much a normal functioning husband capacity kind of male. I would get
I'm
frustrated
so
with my
sorry.
yeah, I was frustrated with my ex-wife because she wasn't really doing anything. I would expect her to at least handle some of that shit, but she wasn't. But I was just like, well, whatever, you know. Um, but then after the dissolution of that marriage, I kind of tossed SI out the window. I was just like, fuck it, what's the point or something. I don't know exactly what happened. But then, a couple years after that, I got with Candace, and she kind of took over my SI stuff, right? So, but what's interesting is she didn't necessarily do, in retrospect, a spectacularly great job of it. She spent a lot of money. I realize now. I didn't even pay any attention to any of that shit before. The whole time we were together, I didn't have any idea anything about our finances at all. I just give her my paychecks, and that was that, you know. And I just buy what I
Yeah,
gotta buy.
So you went
I
with
think sometimes
you just
people who
went
are more dominant introverted sensing get a rep for being very good with money, which I don't think is necessarily a tried and true standard, because I know there's some INFJs that are particularly still there. I think
Yeah,
your
I'm here.
picture cut out there for a second. I mean, like, there's some INFJs. There's some ways that I handle money okay, but I do think it's funny that because you said your second wife was what, an ISFJ?
ESFJ. I wish she were an
Yeah.
ISFJ. I think if she were an ISFJ, we'd still be together.
I think so. I think you probably would be.
Because here's the thing: the
So sorry.
ESFJ,
Sorry.
ESFJ and ENTP visions of a social presence as a couple are both active and both conflict. Whereas ISFJ has a passive perception of themselves, presenting themselves as a couple. It's still important to her, but at the end of the day, what she much as likely to do as anything else is want to go home. You know. So that's the difference between ESFJ and ISFJ is that ESFJ has a very clear social script about how things are supposed to go, and she expects her husband to cooperate. That's why ESFJ needs an INTP, because INTP doesn't really care, doesn't have a lot of aspirations in the FE area, and so they're happy enough to be
Ouch!
they're,
Ouch!
they're happy enough to be led around in FE, just like I'm happy enough to be led around in SI, right? I, I
No,
I don't want to have any decision making power in that area. You can have all the SI you want. You can have it all. I don't. You take care of my SI, lady, and ideally, I'll take care of your NE. So that's why I want an ISFJ. You be the SI Dom, I'll be the NE Dom, and we'll be duals, and we'll match up like that. That's my
Yeah, I
idea.
notice with my parents, I think they offer an example. Um, like my ISFJ parent would maybe comment like, "Hey, you should wear a nicer shirt" or something like that. Whereas under stress, the ESFJ might be like, "You're embarrassing me" or something like that. There's like this infringed upon social order.
Right.
true.
What's your
But
other
at
parent?
no point did they say, "Hey, what the hell's this great? Shit, we have a lovely disorder kid. What the hell's going on? What are we gonna do? What the fuck are we gonna do with our kid?" Oh no,
my, my dad's an ISFJ, my mom's an ESFJ.
Really? A couple of SFJs together, huh? That's an interesting
Yeah, my
pairing.
sister's an ESFJ too. So,
Are you the only N in the family?
yep.
Was that a little tricky?
Only like a
What was
thing.
more tricky? I mean, like, trying to explain myself to them, I think I always seemed kind of off the wall, but I think the thing that was worse than that is no one in the house valued FI. So, I think
You got an
like
alpha
my
house.
personal,
You got an
yeah,
alpha house, huh? You found yourself born in an alpha house. What a nightmare for an INFJ. We don't care about your goddamn feelings, Ken. Will you shut the fuck up?
Parent and INTP. But my sisters, they're mixed, but whatever. But I was the oldest at like 5, and like I have to say that everyone is really mixed, and because it was this weird mix of like being a big family compared to like the normal standard of North American, which was like 3. We were 5, so I was 5. I don't know. I we were allowed to be weirder. I don't know. It's like this weird thing of like rules get broken, and like you break rules all the time. Who cares? I don't know if I know. But the weirdness about rules is what do you think they're true, but they're all over the place. The rules are not right or wrong. They are really weird.
Something, you were back to the subject sort of with the whole midlife crisis thing.
Right.
I mean, do you pretty much think it's like you have a function that's been sort of underdeveloped in your life, and then now you find yourself
Yes.
maybe in the position that
Especially where developed it for 20 years, which I did. Like I knew NBTI as 20-year-old, and I thought I was like fucking figuring it out to the point where, for sure, I got this figured out.
I think
22.
I suspect it has
There's
a little
no
more
way
to do.
that holy shit!
I suspect it has a little bit more to do with trauma and stuff. You know, it's like if you experience substantial traumas, then you're more likely to return in some sense to an earlier stage of development. And I think that's what people normally mean by a midlife crisis. That like, okay, well, I got divorced and now he's off. He bought himself a Corvette. He's driving around and trying to find a 20-something-year-old chick to get down with, stuff like that. But I don't think that necessarily the things that might be interpreted as being that are going to be that. And it may have something to do with certain functions. For me, I think it's displayed primarily in FE areas. And I think it's because I was forced to be an introvert during all the years in which I was drinking too much. Because I didn't want this, right? And I don't know what to do exactly with this, in fact, because I imagine that Robert Wiseman isn't going to have a particularly thrilling experience watching this video, but I don't want to not put it up because, I mean, we put the time into making it, you know? And I don't know what to do about that. Robert Wiseman, I hope next time you come back, I would love to talk to you sober. That'd be great. You know, and I don't know what your relationship with alcohol is. I'm not making any claims about it, right? But I know from my own experience, I don't like I wouldn't want to wake up and watch this video in the morning. You know, so that's reality. That's kind of a midlife crisis sometimes too. We turn to what we need to turn to. You know, after my first marriage, I became a meth addict. So, was that a midlife crisis? Becoming a meth addict? That's a high quality midlife crisis there. I'll take this midlife crisis any day over any other one. And Taylor, which prompted Taylor's question, was he bought 3 pairs of green shoes and wanted to know if that qualified as a midlife crisis. Absolutely. It also makes you a leprechaun in training.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, for myself, I feel like during my 20s it'll be important to do some of that SE related stuff. If I focus too heavily on everything else and kind of push that out, I might find myself later on suddenly being like, I need to go skydiving and I need to do this and do that, and
Well,
all these different things.
I mean, my interpretation of SE, and granted it's not in my conscious stack, so I don't really understand it all that well, but for me it just seems like the thing that makes me do something instead of not doing something. And so, in my opinion, if you are engaged in life processes that are active and that are pursuing ideas that you want to do and stuff like that, at least some of the time, then you probably don't have an issue with SE. It's not so much about skydiving as it is about, I don't feel quite up to this thing. I'm just going to sit here and kind of worry about it for some more and stress out about not getting shit done that I want to be getting done. Like those kind of experiences.
I was kind of implying that as like an over-exaggeration of it, like because you suppress some of those earlier
no hyperbole allowed
actions. It's all I got. It's how I communicate.
I take everything literally. You want to go skydiving?
I didn't slide down the slide enough as a kid, so now I need to go skiing.
Right.
I need to go. I didn't do the small stuff.
Anyway, I interrupted you with my joke. Sorry about that. I don't know where you were going.
I don't know where I was going. I typically rely on other people to figure that out.
JC, where were we both going? JC's not paying attention. Oh, she is paying attention. She says, I don't know. That's what IDK means, if you want a translation of internet shorthand. Okay. Well, thanks for watching Talking with People. This has been about midlife crises and various ways in which they display.